Hi everyone, welcome to the School Improvement Institute training for schools in the process of updating their school improvement plan. This video will help steering team members prepare for Council Discussion 5, which is on interventions. My name is Sue Reynolds and I am president of the American Student Achievement Institute. So let's begin with some odds and ends. First of all, we're recording this video on March 1st, and we assume that all of our schools have uploaded their school improvement plan to DOE. You finished that plan last spring, and we're ready to upload it right away, so we don't think we had any problem with this. Also, we wanted to make sure that focus and priority schools submitted this week, also due March 1st, their student achievement plan to their DOE Outreach Coordinator. This was actually already written. Everything that was required in the student achievement plan, we've incorporated into the school improvement plan. So when you finished your school improvement plan, you have also finished your student achievement plan. So what our focus and priority schools needed to do is to simply transfer information from their school improvement plan to the DOE student achievement plan template, which was a Word doc, and this was due this week also on March 1st. So the plan was due to the outreach coordinators, and to help you create it, we emailed to all schools this last week as soon as we were aware that this was due to DOE. We created a crosswalk. So on this sheet that was emailed to all of our SI2 schools, you can see in the left-hand column is the thing that DOE is asking you for in their SAP template, and then on the right-hand column is where you should click. If you just click that link, that'll open up your school improvement plan to the right place where you can copy and paste it and then put it into your student achievement plan. So lots of instructions there too, and if you have any questions, make sure you call us about doing that transfer. If you have any questions about the student achievement plan in general, those questions should be directed to your DOE Outreach Coordinator, and there's the different regions in the state. And the email or the web address for the outreach division for DOE is at the bottom there, www.doe.in.gov/outreach. If you have any questions about if you are truly a focus school or a priority school, or if the SAP was required for your school, please contact your outreach coordinator right away. And find out if that report was due, and then we can help you do the crosswalk between the school improvement plan that you created with us, getting the parts of it out that should be incorporated into your student achievement plan. Okay, then as I've mentioned, we're submitting this report to your DOE Outreach Coordinator. Okay, then we just wanted to give everybody a heads up that this year for your 16-17 plan that you're creating right now, in May or June, when you finish your school improvement plan, you will be able to hit a download button so that you can download your school improvement plan just like always. But new this year, you'll be also able to click a different button, and a PDF version of the student achievement plan will download as well. Because remember, we've incorporated all the parts that are required for the student achievement plan into the school improvement plan. So when you're finished with your improvement plan, you're also finished with your achievement plan. So at the end, you'll just click one button to download the SIP, and then click another button to download the SAP. So we'll do that in May or June, whenever you have finished your school improvement plan for 2016-17. Okay, another announcement that we just wanted to bring back onto your radar is that in the next couple of weeks we'll be advertising for a new cohort of SI2 schools. These schools will be creating their 16-17 school improvement plan that they'll be implementing next year. They'll begin convening their steering team and their council in April, and will complete their work in September, just shortly after you complete your work. So they'll be doing an SI2 Lite, SI2 Lite, and we'll have abbreviated discussions for them, but then they'll learn how to use the SI2 system, and when they get to the next year, it's 17-18, then we'll go back into the regular SI2 with them. So we know that a lot of schools are just finishing their 15-16 plan that most schools, our schools at least, have been implementing this year. So we wanted to create an opportunity for those schools to have support as they quickly developed their 16-17 plans that are due next year, actually due in the fall. So yeah, so we'll be getting a mailing to all the Indiana principals about that. And there will probably be no cost involved with this cohort. This is going to be kind of a one-time special deal to teach schools about SI2. And then if they like the system, then when they renew to create their 17-18 plan, we will drop in our regular charge. Okay. Also wanted to just mention to you, we've been having a lot of really nice discussions with the Indiana Association of School Principals. We checked to see how many of our principals belong to their professional association, and I'm really pleased that 85% of our principals do. That I think is a good percentage. I'm kind of proud of that. But if you are a principal that is not a member of IESP, I really suggest that you consider doing that. It's $145 for new principals. It's $189 to renew. Their web address is there. They have done a really good job at advocating for schools in terms of what makes sense in expectations of schools to create school improvement plans. They're supportive of our work and our process. I'm really pleased in their March issue of their publication, Indianagram. They're going to do an article featuring school improvement that will focus on SI2. Steve Morris, the principal at Lanesville High School, is going to write that article for IASP. And we just really think that that is a great organization. So if you haven't, if you're not a member and you're a principal or you're an aspiring principal, I'd really suggest that that be something that you look into. So, okay. Just a reminder, our live briefing where you'll be able to ask questions about this month's activities and tasks will be Thursday, March 3rd, 2:30 Eastern Standard Time. So register online and we'll be happy to answer any questions you have about this week's submission of your SIP or SAP, but also about the tasks that you're doing as you're developing your 16-17 school improvement plan. Okay, so let's talk then about this month's discussion. Very important discussion. We're talking about interventions this month. And the first thing that we need you to do, if you haven't done it already, is to watch the council presentation. This introduces interventions, goes over some of the vocabulary and how we classify interventions in SI2. And you really need to be, as a steering team member, aware of what we're saying to your council members as in our training for them. So if you haven't done that, why don't you just pause this video real quickly and go watch that one, and then we'll come back and resume this one. Okay, so let's look at some tips for implementing this month's discussion about interventions. Remembering that we want to get really solid, strong interventions in place so that we can address those root causes. So as you're looking at interventions, this is really where we want to see is everything lining up. The question you should be asking yourself now as a steering team member, as a principal, is will your school improvement plan have an impact on achievement? And if the answer is yes, this is what we would expect to see. One is, do you have specific SMART goals? They're not general goals like let's increase language arts, English language arts, or let's increase the percentage of kids who pass I-STEP math. They're not those broad goals. They're your PAIs. A good school improvement plan is going to have very carefully thought out SMART goals, achievement goals. And then the next question, as we look at your whole plan now together, is do you have the right root causes in place? You know, if one of my SMART goals is to help students master ratios, do we have the right root causes? Have we identified the things that are happening that are causing kids to not master ratios on I-STEP? So do you have the right root causes? And then the next question is, do you have the right interventions that will address those root causes? If those three things are sound, we tend to see student achievement go up. If we've got the right targeted, focused SMART goals, we've identified the things that are getting in the way, and then we're doing something about those things. We've got strong interventions in place. That's really, really, really key. And then the next step we'll talk about next month is to make sure those interventions get implemented well, fully, and with integrity. So this month, while we're talking about interventions, we're really looking at the whole package. Does everything make sense together? Do we have the right targeted achievement goal? Have we identified the right things that are getting in the way? And do we have sound fixes? Are we putting in place the right interventions, the right fixes? And again, if all those three things are in place, we tend to have schools where the achievement goes up. Now, here's what you may find. As you start to look at your SMART goals, your root causes, and your interventions, if you're starting to find that they're getting broad, you know, we're talking about things like attendance or things like parent involvement. I mean, those are great things. You know, yes, they can be a root cause. Yes, they impact our achievement goals, but they're very broad. They're not like pinpointing what is the issue for this SMART goal. So if you're starting to find that your interventions are broad, they're not focused on one specific root cause, or your root causes are broad, even though, you know, you thought they were okay last month, but now the light bulb's going off, oh my gosh, we are really kind of broad there. This is where we want you to go back and become very specific with these things. As we looked at some of our schools, or actually all of our schools' work over the last, that you've done over the last couple months, we're starting to see a tendency where some of our schools are getting broad in these areas. And so we're going to try to really focus in this month in our guidance for you on keeping these things pinpoint specific. Exactly what achievement do we want to see? Very narrow. Which group of students? Which indicators? You know, how narrow can we get that? And then narrow root causes, and then very pinpointed interventions towards those root causes. So I think a theme to think about in this is generality is your enemy. Anytime you've gone general, your school improvement plan is not going to be as strong. And then another thing to avoid is lumping. If, say, for example, you have a goal where you want all of your 3rd through 6th graders to read at grade level. If you have one SMART goal that says that the student group is students in grades 3 through 6 that are reading at grade level, that becomes really broad. You don't know. There may be some root causes for your 3rd graders and different root causes for your 6th graders. So if we can split out those SMART goals and have a SMART goal, you know, for just your 3rd graders and a SMART goal for just your 4th graders, and then further split down those root causes, so we're really pinpointing on what's getting in the way of 3rd graders, what's getting in the way of 6th graders, what's getting in the way of our boys versus girls, or whatever. You know, is it this indicator, is it that indicator? The more specific you can make these three things, SMART goals, root causes, and interventions, the higher leverage your school improvement plan is going to have. So avoid lumping lots of things into one root cause or one intervention or one SMART goal. And remember, anytime you go general, you're weakening your school improvement plan. General things are important, but if that's all you've done, then we're not going to see as big gains on percentage of students who are succeeding. Okay, so as you're looking at things this month, feel free to go back and to say, oh my gosh, I really did lump a lot of things in together into this SMART goal. And sometimes we think everything's okay, but then as we start to kind of get into the next steps, we realize that this would have been better if we had been more specific back there. We are going to do the same thing. When Tina's reviewing your work this month, she's going to go back too and look at the big picture and say, okay, with these SMART goals, these root causes, these interventions, is it likely that we're going to really raise achievement with this school improvement plan? So we'll be looking over your shoulder with that as well. And if we do find something that we think maybe back in a SMART goal might have been more specific now as we're looking at your root causes and interventions, we may ask you to go back and add a more specific SMART goal and really tease that SMART goal out. So at any rate, or just, we'll give you some suggestions and you make the decision about whether or not you want to do that. So, okay, wanted to talk about that, really important. Okay, so as we are prepping for this discussion, the first thing we need to do is to have the student body discussion, because we're going to pull that information into and let your council look at it before they come up with their ideas. So the student body discussion this month is open-ended. We're going to, in this document there, this template, you'll write some of your root causes on the left, and then we're asking the students what do they think that the school should do about it, or the community should do about it. So what could our school do to address this situation? Very open-ended. You're targeting a couple of the root causes that you would, or 2 or 3 that you would like to have student input on. And then we'll take that information, your council will look at that before they discuss the same thing. Okay. Then also, before you open the discussion, please check your root cause report. Has each of the root causes been entered accurately? Do you want to make some of those root causes more specific? Do you need to go back and first make some of the SMART goals specific, so then your root causes can be specific? And just remember, the whole strength of your school improvement plan tends to be dependent upon how carefully focused those root causes are. So I can't emphasize that enough, that you have the right root causes in place before you get to the intervention section. Okay, then, so I'm going to go back for a second. So you've already watched the council video, so you know the council is going to be giving you a thumbs up or a thumbs down on each of your current interventions. And then they're going to be doing some research and giving you some idea maybe for new interventions. And so that's their input this time. Now, after the discussion, there is another set of steps that we'd like the steering team to do. So, first of all, we've created a lot of crosswalks for you to look at. And you're looking at these crosswalks to determine the strength of your interventions. So one crosswalk is going to the first one there, is going to group all of your interventions by root cause. So you can look at, say, okay, here's this root cause. Our kids don't participate in ratios lessons. And then here's the interventions. Is that going to do it? So you're kind of studying your interventions based on the impact that they're going to have on your root causes. We've also given you some other crosswalks. Another way we're going to group the interventions in number 2 is by the ASAI elements of high achieving schools. That will help you to see if you have mainly curriculum rigor interventions or instructional interventions or guidance interventions, just to kind of give you a way to look at those interventions again. And then in number 3, we've taken all the turnaround principles, and in number 4, the turnaround principle indicators. And we'll pull up each turnaround principle. We'll say, okay, here's the indicator that DOE has published under that turnaround principle, and here's the intervention that you've got in place that is going to address that indicator. Remember, turnaround schools, those are schools, schools that are priority schools are schools that, have been lower achieving schools for quite a while. And it really is about turning around the priority schools. So there's a lot of indicators there. We're kind of rebuilding the school from the ground up, and we want to make sure that your interventions are addressing all of those indicators. So if you are a priority school or a focus school, we'll look at those interventions sorted by turnaround principle and then sorted by turnaround principle indicator. In number 5, we'll look at interventions sorted by student group. This will show you if your interventions are focused on boys or on girls or on Hispanic or free reduced lunch kids. A lot of times, not a lot of times, sometimes we find that in some schools all interventions are for all kids, and we wonder how you're going to close achievement gaps if that's the case. So one of the things that that we require is that you focus on a student group where you're experiencing a gap. In some of our rural schools, that may be your low-income kids, and who knows who it's going to be, but your free and reduced lunch kids. So, but this will tell you, are you focusing on a specific student group, or are you just kind of, for all kids? And then the next one is external expectations. That's going to bring up, that's going to sort your interventions by the PL 221 requirements and the Title I school-wide and Title I TAS requirements. So, so that will let you know if you've met all the external expectations for your school, in addition to those that you might have if you're a focused priority school. And then on number 7, that crosswalk is going to tell you how much energy your whole plan is going to take, and if you find you have 20 interventions that you've all labeled as high energy, we would suggest you think about that. We don't want to spread you so thin that you can't do anything well. On the other hand, if you find that all of your interventions are low energy interventions, then that would be a good indicator to you and to us that you haven't really dug in. You're not really doing anything major in the classroom. So, okay, so and then the final crosswalk is really kind of a summary of your school improvement plan. It is going to start out, it'll list your SMART goals, and then under each SMART goal will be the root causes that are impacting that SMART goal, and then under each root cause are the interventions. That's really the report I love to look at because it kind of summarizes everything. Here's the SMART goal, here's what's getting in the way, here's what we're doing about it. So that's another crosswalk that we'd like you to look at. Now, as you look at those crosswalks, you might then be saying to yourself, oh my gosh, I'm a focus school and I didn't address any turnaround principles, and I know that's a requirement. So in the rubric, it'll show you that's a requirement. So then you're going to need to go back and add interventions, address a new area so that you've got at least one of the turnaround principles addressed. Or you might say, oh my gosh, here's a root cause. In the first report, here's a root cause, and I'm not doing any interventions to address it. And then I'd be questioning, then why do you have it in there as a root cause? Let's put some interventions in. And if you're not going to put any interventions in, then let's get rid of that root cause. So, okay, so all those crosswalks will help you think through things. And our expectation then is before finalizing your interventions, you will tweak them, adjust them, edit them, so that based on the information that you've learned in these crosswalks. Okay, then I wanted to show you the rubric items on, let me go back, I'm sorry. Notice that there's 2 of those crosswalks that are in bold. Number 1, the root causes, number 2, the school improvement plan summary. Those are the 2 that from our experience, when you've hit those 2 areas hard, all of your root causes, and then everything makes sense in your crosswalk, those are the schools where we tend to see achievement go up the most. So, we're not worrying, those 2 reports, don't worry about any external expectations. It's just what is your data telling you and what do you know you have to do. So another thing, there's a rubric for every single one of those crosswalks, but I wanted to point out the rubric for the root causes, and basically it just reads, the interventions associated with each root cause hold high promise for impacting the associated root cause if the interventions are fully implemented with integrity. So when Tina's looking at, when I'm looking at this, when you're looking at this, we're going to look and say, okay, here's a root cause, and then we're going to say, okay, let's look at all these interventions. So if these interventions are done well, is that root cause going to go away? Are we going to have an impact on that root cause? The answer is no. Then we know we've got a weak school improvement plan, and so we'll be contacting you to say, we're not so sure you're going to really hit this root cause with these interventions. So that should be a question that you're asking yourself as well. And then same thing with the school improvement plan summary. And that one, you can see in the little diagram at the bottom, it's going to list your SMART goal and then the root causes under it and then the interventions. And again, that's our final time, your final time to really look at, does this school improvement plan make sense? Do we have the right SMART goals? Do we have the right root causes? Do we have the right interventions? Is everything, if I get rid of these 2 root causes, am I going to be able to reach that SMART goal? If I implement these interventions, is that going to get rid of the root cause? So yeah, so and then the rubric item is collectively the root causes and associated interventions hold high promise for impacting each of the SMART goals. And if we're coming up with a no on one of those, we're going to be calling you and just kind of chatting about some of the things that we're worried about. And if you come up with a no on that is a good sign that it's back to the back to planning, that we need to make some adjustments in your school improvement plan. Okay. Then, for our turnaround principles, so for the priority schools and the focus schools, you are looking at meeting the turnaround principles and indicator crosswalk. For the priority schools, you're required to address all 8 of the turnaround principles, and which I'm sure your DOE Outreach Coordinator has been talking with you about. And then if you're a focus school, you're required to address 1 or more principles that, based on the information from your self-studies and your root cause analysis, it's pointed to this principle is an issue for your school, and so we want to address that issue. Okay, so here are the rubric items. For each turnaround principle, all indicators have been addressed by interventions in a manner that holds high promise for turning around the school with regard to that specific turnaround principle. So if the turnaround principle that's an issue for your school is the one dealing with leadership, then we're going to look at, did all these indicators get addressed? And of course, if you're a priority school and you have to do all 8 principles, then we're really looking at all those indicators. So next one, interventions align with the turnaround principles selected. Sometimes we'll have someone say, oh, this intervention aligns with this principle, and they have nothing to do with each other. So we want to make sure that your interventions and your principles are aligned. And then finally, the school has submitted, and actually, we decided to change this at the last minute. It's not going to be a form, but you will verify in the process page that you have talked to your DOE Outreach Coordinator about your interventions. We want to make sure that the DOE Outreach Coordinator for our focus and priority schools is on board and understands what the school is doing. So, okay. So, and again, here are the regions for the DOE Outreach Coordinators, and there's the web address. So if you are a focus or priority school, especially if you're a priority school and you don't know who your outreach coordinator is, which I'm sure you do, but if you don't, I would be calling that person right away and introducing yourself and just building that relationship. So, okay. So finally, some additional tips for focus and priority schools. So we are making some assumptions. With our work, we always try to know where the train is going, and we try to get our schools there before the train arrives. So here's where we think the train's going. We're assuming that next year, in February or March, that DOE is going to ask again focus and priority schools to submit an SAP to DOE for next year, for 16-17. So we're assuming that that's going to happen next year, just like it happened this year and the year before. So we're also assuming that since DOE's template did not change from last year to this year, it's been the same all along, that template will be the same, or it'll be close to being the same to the template that was due this year. So we think next year our schools are going to, our priorities and focus schools are going to have to do the same thing in terms of reporting to DOE that you did this year. So with that in mind, we are creating this new tool so that when you download your school improvement plan PDF, you'll be able to just hit a button and your student achievement plan PDF will also download at that time. So we know a lot of our schools really scrambled in the few weeks that you had to get that SAP report ready for DOE, and we don't want that to happen again. So that as a kind of a service to you. If DOE does ask you for that report, you'll already have it done, just like you already had your school improvement plan done. Both of those will be finished in May or June of this year. So whenever DOE asks for them, you've already got it ready to go. So okay, so look for that when after you get the balloons that your whole school improvement plan has been approved and is ready to go. You'll be able to download those two reports, the SIP and the SAP. The SAP will be in the exact same format that DOE used for their template this year. Okay, so we're kind of excited about that. We think that's a nice service that we can provide for schools. Okay. So yeah, this is just how it will look. So just like this year, you could scroll down to the bottom of the process tab and download an SIP. You'll be able to download an SAP now also. Okay, then just the intervention requirements to just remind the focus and priority schools. I kind of just alluded to this. Priority schools have to address all 8 principles. Focus schools, following the analysis of data, then you would align your interventions with just the specific turnaround principles that are getting in the way. And your analysis, when DOE says analysis for you, that means your SI2 turnaround principles self-study, and your SI2 root cause analysis addresses the things that would help you with that. Okay. Then one thing we wanted to point out, and again, this is from this year, we think it's going to be the same as next year. This is a page from the SAP template, and we just wanted to note here that strategies must include the following. So a combination of all of your strategies, if you're addressing turnaround principle number 1, a combination of all of your strategies need to hit all, I think there's 11 different indicators there that have to be addressed through the combination of all of your school leadership strategies. So, okay. Action steps, that will come right out of when you create the interventions in your SIP. We'll just pull those action steps out of the interventions and put them into the new SAP report. Okay, so let's get on online, and we'll walk through the online system. And yep, let's see. Okay, so I'm logged in as Demo SI2 School, and you can see I'm on the process page. So I am going to scroll down to the March activities, which is the intervention update. So we're watching the council video that will be up here tomorrow. The SI2, the steering team video will be up there. You're participating in the live briefing. Here's how to register. You're entering the student body discussion. You're opening the council discussion, then monitoring the discussion, making sure everybody's talking, and then entering the council discussion. We know that some SI2 schools do those discussions face-to-face. Others of them have online discussions using our online discussion tools. Doesn't matter. Either way that works for you is fine. Okay, now, after the discussion, I do want to spend some time walking through this. You're going to update the interventions, and here's how to do that. I'm going to click on the Enter button, and my interventions pop up. Demo school doesn't have very many interventions. Your school will have a ton. And so one thing we can do is we can just click this X to delete the intervention. Another thing that we can do is edit the intervention. I can see the intervention report. But one at a time, when I'm finished with that intervention, I'll submit it. When you submit those interventions one at a time, Tina will read them one at a time, or somebody else in our staff. It'll be Tina for you guys. We'll read those one at a time. And then she'll put a status. It'll say meets criteria, needs revision, meets criteria, see comments. And if it says needs revision, they'll click on the status, and Tina's comments will come up. So yeah, so that's where you're going to find the status for those. On the individual interventions, here's the rubric items for those. So, and if you're adding an intervention, you would just click Add an Intervention. And I want to walk through that quickly. Let's say that the intervention, let's say we're working on the root cause of absenteeism, specifically absenteeism for males. And so my title of the intervention might be phone call to home student absent. Not a very creative title, but I think you get the point. We're going to call kids homes when they're absent. And then I would write a description of what's happening. I would check the root cause. So is this having anything specifically to do with this specific root cause? No. It is going to hit absenteeism, which is a general root cause. This is also a general intervention. So now I'm going to say this intervention specifically addresses a student group that appears in parentheses. So in other words, we said absenteeism, that it was not a problem across the board. It was mainly for males. So I'm going to say yes, it is targeted, and it's targeted to males. So, and that should be reflected also in my description how this intervention is going to address the male population. So how does this intervention address the needs of the targeted student group? So I explain how it's going to address the needs of the boys. What ASAI element is it? This one is part of the learning environment. Which impact area outside the classroom? And then which energy level? This is probably, I would indicate this as a medium because it's only going to involve, it'll involve a few people in a major way, but it's not going to involve the whole staff to when those phone calls go home. So I want to include this intervention in the searchable database. Entry for this tab is complete, and save. Okay, so then I'm going to move to the next tab, which is external expectations. So I'm being asked, is this intervention going to address any of the turnaround principles? I could say, school culture and climate. Then is it safe and orderly? No. Is it maintains a culture that values learning and promotes the academic personal growth of students? High expectations. I think I would probably check this one, that it's going to having kids be at school is going to maintain that culture. And then I scroll down and I'm going to come to the next section. Does this impact any of the Indiana rules and regulations for Title I school-wide? Parent involvement, safe and discipline, not really. Indiana rules and regulations. Indiana PL 221, attendance, bingo. I can do that one with this intervention. External expectations. I read through this list, any that have to do with attendance, I would check off. And then entry for this tab is complete, and hit save. Okay, and then the final part is asking me, okay, who is going to be responsible for this intervention? Let's say Jane Doe. And when is this intervention going to happen? And it is going to happen on, let's say it's going to start happening on, come back here, whoops, come back, on August 9th. And oops, actually, I want to rethink that. Instead of saying that it's going to happen on August 9th, this one really is ongoing. It's going to happen every day. So I'm just going to mark it down as ongoing because it's happening daily. If you have one that's happening like once a month, I would go ahead and put in 9 different dates. It's happening once during the year. But if it's something that's happening every day or weekly, then I'd go ahead and click the ongoing. And then we know that for some of you, the intervention, we don't know what it is yet, so you can just click on intervention date to be determined. Now, this part, if you have identified that this intervention is going to address a turnaround principle, for that SAP report, we know we need to have the intervention evaluation developed. So if this is associated with the turnaround principle, this intervention evaluation will automatically be checked. In this section, what we're doing is we're saying, okay, next month when we're starting to develop the interventions, what parts do we want to develop? So am I going to need any professional development for this? If so, check that. Am I going to need resource securement? Yes, I'm going to need a new phone system that will call homes when their children are absent, and I'm going to need to find the funding to support that. So what these checks do is it customizes next month's activities so that the computer will ask you to develop the things that you've checked here. And then entry for this is complete, and then save. Okay, so that's how you are entering. I'm going to go back to the process tab. I'm going to show you a couple of those crosswalks. Scroll back down to March. And remember, every time you finish an intervention, so I should have gone back and submitted that. If I forget, I can, like I just forgot, so I can click on the enter again, and I can go find that intervention, and here it is, phone calls home, and now I can submit it. Okay, don't forget to submit them. Okay, so now I've got all my interventions submitted. I'm going to confirm that they've all been submitted, so I'm not going to submit any more interventions, and now I'm going to start looking at the crosswalks. So if I look at the root cause intervention crosswalk, I'm just going to open up that report, and up it comes. Here are my root causes: absenteeism, ratios are not taught, students needing extra help for ratios, don't get it. And I'm just looking through, do I have interventions that are going to address those root causes, and are they strong enough interventions that those root causes will go away or be significantly impacted? So you'll notice too that some of your interventions you may be doing just to satisfy some external requirement, and if so, then they're going to pop up in a list that just says external expectations. You have that check there to just remind you why you're doing this one. This one didn't really address any of your school's root causes. We're just doing it because somebody outside your school said you had to. Okay, so this is one, and if you're reading through this and you think, students need extra help for ratios, they're not getting it. Math club, is that enough? Oh my gosh, that's only going to hit kids that can stay after school. Maybe I need to put another intervention in there. Maybe we need an inside the classroom intervention. And so then you'd go back in and add another one. So this report, this crosswalk, more than any of them, I think will really help you strengthen your school improvement plan. Okay, so you can see, ASAI'S elements of high-achieving schools. Every single one of these is a crosswalk. Here's the turnaround crosswalk. This is showing you just the turnaround principles at the top, and then if I scroll down, you'll see all of the interventions for each of those principles, and all of the indicators for each of those principles, and then which of your interventions are meeting the indicators. So, okay, and again, this stuff is going to really help you strengthen your interventions. Here's that report, the School Improvement Plan Summary. Let's take a look at that one. So, again, when I look at this one, it starts out with our general root causes. So these are root causes that do not address a specific goal. And so I have my root causes. General ones is absenteeism, and then that root cause is being addressed now by 2 different interventions. And then if I scroll down, now I get into these specific root causes. So and also the SMART goals. So my SMART goal in this case is I'm looking at the 7th graders, all students in the 7th grade, so it's not just boys or girls, but all students in the 7th grade who master ratio standards on I-STEP. And now I'm thinking, okay, here's what I've got in place that's going to impact this SMART goal. I've got these root causes, so I'm asking myself, okay, if I can make these things go away, is that SMART goal going to be, are we going to reach that SMART goal? So the answer is yes, and then I'm going to say, okay, will these interventions make these SMART goals go away? And if the answer is no there, then we have to strengthen those interventions. Or if the answer is no up here, that these root causes aren't enough to make these the SMART goal go away, then I need to tweak the root causes. So this is kind of your summary report. It kind of puts everything in place. You've got your SMART goal, you've got your root causes underneath that SMART goal, and then the interventions that you're putting in place for the root causes. Okay, go back. The last thing you've done then is you're going to talk to DOE, talk with the outreach coordinator, and there'll just be a button here where you confirm that you've talked with them about your interventions and given them a chance to have some input as you're planning as well. And we really want to encourage that relationship with your DOE Outreach Coordinator. And then you're submitting your finalized interventions. So now everything's ready. When you click this submit button, then Tina is going to go back and look at all these crosswalks and see what she thinks about if you've missed anything. And she'll also kind of judge the strength of your school improvement plan. And then finally, you're going to file the intervention signature sheet. That is just simply a sheet that lists all of your interventions, and we're just asking all of your educators to just sign off on that they are aware that you are going to implement those interventions next school year, and that they support them in concept. So okay. So, and this is an ASAI form, an SI2 form. We just want to make sure that if your educators are not on board, that you know now in the planning stage instead of in the middle of the implementation stage. So we're just asking everybody, okay, can you support this? Okay. And then when this is all finished, you'll be able to print your intervention calendar. So you just click that, the calendar will pop up. The computer generates that from everything else you put in already. And then do make sure that you're reviewing the rubric items on this. So, okay, so that's a quick walkthrough. On the manual tab, don't forget, you'll find there's a student body prompt in that manual tab here that goes with this month's activities. So, okay, two slides left. Let's quickly look at those, and then we'll close. Okay, so looking ahead then to the second semester, going on with the second semester, this month in March, you've updated your interventions, and then next month we're going to prepare to implement those interventions. So we'll be kind of teasing out how are we going to evaluate your interventions. What kind of professional development do you need? Do you need resources? Do you need money? And whatever you need, we want to make sure that you've got a plan to get those things, especially professional development, and then evaluating your intervention. Those two are really big. So we'll do all that planning next month. This month is just about identifying the interventions. Next month we'll plan around them. So, okay, and then finally, as always, you have Tina there to help you. Remember, don't wait 5 minutes to call Tina if you're confused. Just immediately pick up the phone. We love talking on the phone. Please feel free to call Tina. We think that is a good way for you to develop your relationship with her as well. But you can also send her an email, of course, to ask a quick question. Also, remember, Tina was a past principal at a school that really made gains in achievement, huge gains. And, she is going to be able to really dig into your school improvement plan and give you some good advice about the strength of it, and so some suggestions about how you might be able to make it even stronger. So she'll be looking at that, but always feel free to say, call her up and say, Tina, would you look at this SMART goal? Do you think with these root causes that if we really hit these root causes, we'll see some achievement gains here? Or, I have this root cause. Do you think if I implement these interventions well, that I really will have an impact on that root cause? So, a lot of this is kind of subjective, but Tina's been doing this for such a long time, so successfully both in the schools and also in coaching our schools, that I think she'll have some good input for you. So, feel free to, schedule an hour appointment with her, half an hour appointment with her, whatever, and just spend some time talking. So, okay, that's it. Good luck as you plan your interventions, and we'll talk with you next month as we start to develop those interventions. Thanks, everyone.